a red flag flying here.
Hello there, welcome to Socialist Think Tank. We are really lucky to have with us today Dave Anderson, the former MP for Blaydon. Hello, Dave.
Hello, Paul. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm champion, man. Champion.
Excellent. So I'm going to just go straight into it now, and I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all our guests. What is socialism to you?
Basically, it's real life. I was never, like, how can I put it? As a kid, I was never, like, involved in politics. My dad had been a trade union rep years and years before. My brother was involved a little bit in the anti-Vietnam stuff, but it sort of just passed me by. But I went to Pitt when I was 15 in 1969, and just instantly it was like, if you go to Pitt, you join the union. If you're in the union, you support Labour. And it was just basically, we learnt the lesson of the past from people who have gone through, you know, all the rubbish of the 30s and 40s, come up the war and said, we're not having this and we can change it. And I mean, I worked in the industry when it was good times. We stuck together. We had a number of strikes in the early 70s. We had big increases in our living standards, and also it meant we could have, you know, better lives at home. I lived in a Corrie house, which was provided like through the union and through the coal board. And it was about community. It was about everybody looking after each other, taking care of each other. It wasn't like, I never probably even thought of being socialism. It was just there. It was what we did. And I think really, it's only until somebody tries and takes all that away from you that you really realise how important it is. And that clearly happened with us with the strike in 1984-85, that like, for no obvious economic reason, but for purely political reasons, a woman come along and decided she wanted to like destroy the way we lived. And she was successful in that, sadly. And people say to me, who's your political inspiration? I tell them all, it's Margaret Thatcher. Because everything I've done since then has been, every day I was going to work, every day I was getting involved with representing people in the union or doing stuff in Parliament. It was giving a back to her for what she did to us. And when I say us, I mean all of us. I lost a job that I was really keen on doing. I love doing it. I live in a nice place. I work with great people. But the job was almost insignificant compared to what happened to our community. It absolutely fell apart. We got drugs coming to the village. Kids running riot. I got burgled by one of my best friend's sons, and that kid would have been working with me under normal circumstances, being an apprentice underneath me or underneath his dad or somebody else. But he was like, he had nowhere to go. You know, like 2 years after strike finish, there was a kid who was 15, 16 years old with no future. And so, you know, it just strengthened within me that getting involved and doing the right thing to try and get as many people as possible to feel the way we did and appreciate the fact that socialism had given us a better life. You know, I mean, people, I always say this to people, why has the Tories, despite all the rhetoric, why have they tried for years and years and years to screw the NHS? It's because the NHS is socialism in action. You know, it's us as a community saying we're all prepared to pay into something that we all hope we never ever have to use, but we're happy to do that for when we do need it. And you can apply that across the board, you know, housing, work, and if we did a situation where everything we did was for the benefit of the community, and you know, and not the hell with the cost, but like, you know, not let money be the dictating factor of why you can and can't do things, we'll be a much better place to be. I used to say, people to me when I was a member of Parliament, what should an MP's job be? And I also like, my job should be to make people happy. And I think as a, you know, make the best way to make them happy is to get us all a good start in life, a good way through life, decent job, kids going to decent school, people living in decent houses, and that will only ever happen, I think, with the socialist program. It's never we've tried it. We've tried it for centuries before we really got the grip in the 40s, and then we've tried it from 1979 onwards, kowtowing to monetarism. It eased off a little bit when we were in power, but not enough to make a real difference. And now we've gone back in the last 10 years massively, and the answer's still there. The answer's the same. Our fathers and mothers, grandfathers and grandmothers had it right in the 1940s. It was the right way forward. We should have kept on doing it.
So, like, you've really described well like what happened there with Thatcher. You're basically saying it was a direct attack on a socialist lifestyle. Is that what you were saying? Like, so all the attacks by Thatcher in the 80s.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it started. I think ultimately she couldn't believe her luck. She decimated the state industry. She brought McGregor across from America. She decimated the state industry. She was having all the crap around in 81 when they had a really bad economic downturn and they were getting riots in the streets and stuff like that. Then she had the fluke of the Falklands War, which like put her on cloud nine as far as she, because she should get away with murder without a shadow of a doubt. And she won in 83 and she come after the state workers, then she come after us in the mines. And I think it was an economic thing at first. I think she really did want to weed out uneconomic pits because she realised, you know, you go and buy coal from places like Colombia and China where you had kids working down the pit and slaves working in quarries. Or places like Russia where, you know, 6,000 many years still dying. China where, you know, people are dying unknown numbers every year getting coal, but they can bring it halfway around the world for cheaper than way to get out of the ground. Because we look after, you know, again, come back to the socialist argument. From nationalisation onwards, we massively invested in mechanisation, we invested in training, we invested in setting up joint bodies between the employer and the employee, and we made the place a better place, but it was an economic cost. It did cost more to have decent machinery, it did cost more to have decent safety standards, it did cost more to let people have, you know, shorter working weeks and better holidays and stuff like that. It was the right thing to do. But she, ultimately, I think, as the strike went on and she saw that the union was weakened, and then we went back to work, and I think she thought we were just going to roll over, but we didn't roll over. We carried on in every little way. I mean, Arthur Scargill's line was we have guerrilla warfare after the strike, and to a certain extent we did. We're having wildcat strikes and things like that. And I think they just realised that the only way to really beat us completely was to destroy the industry altogether. So whatever your argument, your debate is on, you know, the rights and wrong of burning coal, which is obviously different now to what it was 30 years ago, she decided that she would get rid of what was an absolute precious asset to our country to destroy effectively organised labour. Because the truth is, and there's a few obvious exceptions, but by and large, if you look at since we went on strike in the 80s, most people have had the view, well, if the miners cannot win, we cannot win. And I think we're saying, you know, I mean, I'm amazed that for the last 10 years, people's living standards have been completely eroded, and there hasn't really been an organised attempt of industrial action or even real political action to stop it and reverse it. And it's but that is a legacy of what Thatcher was able to get away with, and what and I guess fear is the wrong word, but I think it's people probably just despair, like, well, if the miners can't win, none of us can, and it's quite sad, to be honest with you.
I think you're talking about like the legacy of what Thatcher did, but I was thinking lately with the COVID crisis and everything we've had, like the legacy of what people did in those communities, like the welfare parks and things like that. What would we have done during COVID without the ability to maybe we had no quality of life whatsoever? And you think about like the legacy of what was built in the communities, and we've got buildings like Red Hills, and I know that you're heavily involved in that. So like, you know, this socialist idea, do you think it's had a lasting legacy that people really don't appreciate?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been to a meeting today in Hetton, a place called the Hetton Centre, and it was about the welfare field, the football field, of which I was on a committee that like some 35 years ago, and it's now played on by the Sunderland ladies team and what is effectively the Sunderland reserve team. And you look at it and you think, this is bloody marvellous, you know, the things were built, but nobody appreciates that it was done effectively because the community come together, you know, the lads paid so much weight off the pay notes, the employer contributed, and the council was supportive and all this, and it was joint efforts of people coming together, and it's now run by a trust and the decent people, but there's no sort of real understanding about where they come from, and some of that has got to be put out to us who were involved, you know, from the miners' union and other places who perhaps we didn't blow one trumpet loud enough, and perhaps it's just, you know, we struggle to get through just day-to-day life, so stuff like that was just forgotten. But I mean, there is, I'm involved with a thing called CISWO, which is a country welfare organisation, and the vice chair of the regional one in the northeast. And we still do grants and support people and on an individual basis, and we do convalescent holidays for people that were getting on in the years. We haven't been able to do them this year, obviously, but we've got about £2.5 million that we do grants. We did things like, repairing welfare roofs, putting central heating in places like East and Welfare, places like that. So it's still there if you know about it. But in terms of actually saying, hey, this is us, we did this, we should be proud of it, I think people have lost it, to be honest with you, which is a crying shame, because it's a really good story to be told there.
There absolutely is. And then when you think of when they built Red Hills, when the miners built Red Hills as well, what was the idea behind the building of Red Hills?
The whole point was that Durham was the epicenter of the coal trade for the world by far, and we had a huge membership. My granddad was a branch official back then. He was part and parcel of the people who actually agreed to pay, a penny a week, whatever it was, to get the place built. And it was basically a statement to say to the employer, we are big players. They'd been meeting in what was the old picture hall down North Road, and they started off in the Market Tavern. But when they built the Red Hills, it was a statement to say, look at us, we are serious people. And they were, most of the lads. I often say this thing about, if you ever go to Red Hills and you say what's called the Parliament, there was men going to in those seats. Some of them probably couldn't read and write. The vast majority, if not all of them, didn't have the vote, and yet they were getting up and they were shaping their communities, and but it was to see it the employer, we are on a par with you. It always reminds me, and it's a strange analogy, but if you ever go to see the Stormont building in Northern Ireland, the British government never ever wanted to build that, and they said it had to be built near the road. And in typical Northern Ireland, what's the word? I don't be cheeky, but their stubbornness. They built it exactly a mile from the main road, and halfway down they've got the statue of Carson, and he's pointing at them. And it always reminds me, in a sense, that that's what we did in Durham. It's almost like we got the 4 statues of the guys who started, and they should really put down the V sign, because that's what they were doing, to the employer. And it was a statement of what we were and who we were. And it's magic. And we've just won a lottery bid. We're in the process of just going to see the unions in the next month or so about getting them to contribute if they can. And it'll transform the place for another century. And it's great stuff. It's magic. And with the world's worst working class in this country for defending our history, for saving our history, preserving our history, there's so many things that we just let go. And it's a story that we were the start. We were the start of the Industrial Revolution, and we shouldn't be ashamed of what we did and the things we achieved. I know we did some. When you look at the people who ran the empire, they did some bloody horrible things. But the people who actually made the empire were just ordinary men and women, and part of it was standing up for our people and for our community, and that's the statement that Red Hills made then and still does.
You've just got me thinking now. I wonder with this newfound enthusiasm for statues in the country, and you've got people who stood defending the statue of Lord Londonderry, who's a big figure in the northeast and Northern Ireland. It's my dad's Northern Irish, so I know all about Stormont. So I wonder if there's any way that we could highlight the importance of our actual heritage, our actual
come from.
the way where we've come from in the northeast. I wonder if there's any way we could really push that.
I think it's certainly something we should be doing. It's like I say, we've got so many important. If you look at, I tell you what, it's a disgrace in this part of the world. There's not one pit left, not one. If you forget Beamish. Beamish is, I'm not distracted with Beamish, but it's not a real symbol of what they've got a mining museum in York, so they've got one in Wales. We should have had one in here, but they knocked them down with the undue haste because they were terrified. Certainly for the last 5 that was the ones on the coast, they were terrified that Labour was going to win the 1992 election. So as soon as we didn't win it, they flattened Easington, Hazelton, Weymouth, Westall, what was the other two? Dorden and Vian Tempest. They flattened them. So there's I think the only head gate that's left in the whole of Durham is up in where I'm living down in Teesdale now, and there's a pulley wheels on the road between Rookhope and Allen Heads, and it's the only one. It's the only symbol that's left. I mean, there is the one. There's the one at the Glebe, and the one in South Shields, but they're not what they could have been. You know, and so even as we don't even mark the industry, let alone mark the contributions that working people have done, and that's part and parcel of what will be done within Rennials. Without a shadow of a doubt, it will be. I mean, you know, okay, it'll be other things. It'll be education. It'll be culture, but it'll also be celebrating the heritage that we dead proud of, and rightly so.
So, like, you were a miner, and were you a trade union rep while you were?
I started off in Yorkshire. We travelled all around the country with my dad from 64 to 69. I started 69 in Doncaster. I was there 2.5 years, then I moved back up here. Come from Sunderland originally. I went to Horden Colliery, and I was there about 10 months, and then I went to Eppleton Colliery, which is Hetley Hall, and I was there for about 14 years, and I actually, it's a strange story really. I went to a union meeting because I was getting injured at work, and I had to say to the branch secretary about to put a claim in. And while I was there, they were going through, they said, you'll have to wait at the union till the meeting finishes. And I was about 24 at the time. And there was a letter from the Labour Party saying, does anyone want to go on the Labour Party youth school down in Ruskin College? And there was nobody in the room under 55 except me. So they all said to me, well, Davey, why don't you go? I says, well, I'm not a member of the Labour Party. Oh, we'll join you at the Labour Party. Get yourself away for a week's on it. So that was me first really involved. I've been on strike in the, I was in Yorkshire, and there was 2 regional strikes in 70 and 71. Then there was a national strike 72 and 74. But I wasn't really active in them. I just got married and stuff like that. You know, it was just. But then I became a youth delegate, and I was a regional delegate to the from the pit to the our regional council in Durham. I was a mechanic. I was on the regional executive. I actually cast a vote in '84 about saying we'll come out on strike, but then we did. The mechanics actually had branch votes when they were saying you hadn't had a ballot. We did have ballots. We were one of the few sections in the union that was. We always argued we were legally on strike because we've done it within the rules of the union, albeit a regional rule, but it was a rule. I was chairman at when I went to Merton. I went to Merton in '86. I chaired the branch there. So, you know, I'd been regional and lay active for more than 10 years. And I got me redundant in '89. And I went to work at the council as a care worker.
That's quite an interesting transition, that, isn't it? Because a lot of people who worked in the mines had quite like very different careers when they came out.
The one thing we wanted, it was crackers. I never had money in my life, and I had 20,000 quid in the bank. And I was desperate to get a job because it was like, I must have a job. You know, it's like, it's not the right thing not to have a job. So I was out to work six weeks, and I was going part-time to Durham University. So I just wanted a job to see us through. I was doing like the first year of a degree, it goes part-time. And then if you passed it, you went on the second year. So I was just put in for a job as a car officer driver at a place in Newcastle. And I hadn't got a bloody clue what it was. And they said, like, Dave, do you know, have you ever done any personal cars? Oh, I've looked after my dad. You know, like, something more from the club, maybe stuff like that. But so the first day I went to work, and I was only employed for 13 weeks. That was the original contract. I ended up being there 16 years. But first day I went to work, after about 3 hours, this officer said, Dave, will you take this one to the toilet? I said, no, mate, no, you're joking, aren't you? He said, no, he says, you've got to. I said, no, it's not me joke. He says, it is like Davey. And this last set was Davey, come on, I'll show you how to go on. And it was like, God, where I've let myself in for. But I ended up loving it. It was great. It was like working with people. I mean, I took like, I was earning less than half of what I had been in the pit. But the big thing, and he said about what lads are looking for was security. Because we'd always thought that the pit would be secure. You know, the worst thing I thought was I'd end up maybe working at CM or Easington when I was 65-year-old. You know, not knowing that within 4 years there'd be no left. So a career, well, it was not a career, but a job in care. It was like, well, we'll always need to look after old people, wouldn't we? You know, even that's not even certain nowadays. Like, but so that was part of the reason why I went there. But I just really loved it. And then After about 9 months, I got made permanent, and at the same time, it was Newcastle Council. They were like everybody else at the time. They were under real pressure, budget pressures, and they proposed to do an employee buyout of the care homes, effectively privatised them, but with the employees doing it. So it was a bit more tasteful. And a guy who was a good friend of mine who I'd met when I was working the pit, he was a regional officer for Newby, Phil Lenton. He said, he knew I was had been a union rep. He says, "Will you do us a favour?" I says, "Aye." He says, "They're setting up a steering group." He says, "There's union representation on, but we know they're doing things and not telling the union. Will you go on there as our mole?" So I went on, and I was on for about 6 months, and it was brilliant because we undermined them completely from within. Because they go to meetings and they'd be saying, they get a report like in front of the councils, blah, blah, blah. And like, okay, right, that's great. Anybody any questions? And Phil would say, "Can you tell us what when you went down to Gloucester?" How does he know we went to Gloucester? Or when we went to, what they call them, road chef on TV and stuff like this. So they were, and on the back of that, Phil said, "Do you fancy like working like full time as a seconded lay official?" So in early 1990, late 1990, I became Deputy Branch Secretary of the Newby branch in Newcastle Council, which had about 3,500 members at the time. And from then until I went into Parliament, I was doing union work all the time. And including, I went on to the National Executive of Newby, and then Unison when we merged in 93. And I ended up becoming the president of the union. I was the policy chair for nearly all the time I was in Unison. Worked very closely with Dave Prentice before he became the General Secretary. He was the secretary of the policy meeting. I was the chairman. We developed the minimum wage platform and stuff like that, and did a lot of work in Northern Ireland because our union is one of the few groups in Northern Ireland who worked across the community. So when we said things, it was respected because we didn't let the sectarians get in the way of actually doing the business for people. It was like we didn't care what church you go to or what school you went to. If you're getting treated wrong at work, we'll support you. If you're getting shit on by the bosses, we'll be behind you. This sort of stuff. And it was great stuff, and I really enjoyed working with them people. They were great people. And then I became president of the union in 2003, and I was on the General Council TOC for 6 years from 1999 to when in Parliament. So, good stuff. Great. To me, it was like being a footballer or a pop singer. You're getting paid to do something you give your right arm to do. And I was still only paid as as a car worker, but didn't bother. But I was doing something I loved, and it was like, and we had some great times and we did some good things. So, happy to be doing it. But there become a point where it was a bit like Groundhog Day. We were going. I was on the policy forum of the party, and I was like going to meetings. And it was like, it was the height of Blairism, and we weren't really getting listened to. It was like, it was a bit like you're getting the crumbs off the table. The minimum wage is a good example. We did more than anybody else. We had a great research department in Unison, and we were the first people to put a figure on the minimum wage, and it was £4.15 an hour in 1999. And Blair was like, "Oh, it's far too much." And at the end, we ended up getting £3.65. But if you look at it, that was 20 quid a week back in 1999. And if you look now, if it had gone up, it was literally about where the living wage is now. So so we had it right. And if you think, if it's at that level, the difference it would have made to people's lives, it's 20 quid a week. But when you're being earning like 100 quid a week, that's a big chunk. So good stuff. Work with good people, Ronnie Bickerstaff, people like that. Giants. Proud to call them friends. Just really, really good people.
Again, a lot of what you mentioned there, stuff to be really proud of, and I think sometimes we forget about all the gains we've made, and then they get taken for granted, like the minimum wage, and then like even when you talk about the living wage, actually you're talking about the real living wage, aren't you? Not the thing that George Osborne named the UK absolutely. Living wage, or
Well, I've never done the maths on it, Paul, but if you look at like, whatever percentage 50 pence is out of over 365 an hour, it'll be about now where the Osborne's living wage is about 8.5 quid, and people cover the real living wage, it's well over a tenner. So it's probably we had it about right, because we had serious people. We employed some fantastic policy officers, and we would get people in, and from universities and from business and everything. We're proud of what we did. We were serious players. The other great thing I said, and again, when people tend to forget about it, is the huge strides we did in Northern Ireland. You know, I mean, Northern Ireland's not perfect, but by Christ, it's a lot better than what it used to be. I mean, you know, I was gone there. I first got involved in the middle 80s with Northern Ireland. We had some people across through the miners' union. We had families whose kids had been killed by plastic bullets, and we went from that, you know, less than 20 years later, 15 years later, where, you know, people were genuinely saying, we've got a chance here to make things better. And, you know, it's still nowhere near where we would ever, any of us want to be. But, you know, you're not talking about 3,000 people getting killed. I mean, my first meeting I had with the Newby officer in Northern Ireland, there was a great woman called Inez McCormack, who become big friends with the Clintons. And when she died early, and one of the best epitaphs she got was from Hillary Clinton, because they just admired the work the woman did. And she said, if you think about it, Dave, and this would have been 94, she says 3,000 people have died in Northern Ireland. If it was on the mainland, it would be 100,000. If it was in America, it'd be 500,000. She says, do you really think they would have turned a blind eye to 500,000 Americans getting killed or 100,000 British people getting killed? I said, no, they wouldn't have. And yet, basically, I can remember it. I was like living it, like, you know, you'd put the news on, or somebody else got killed in Northern Ireland. I said, oh, right. What's on the other side? You know, there was that blasé, you know, and it was like, but people were living it, and you know, and we stopped that. You know, we should never ever forget, you know, what a key part we played in that change, real change in people's lives. And you know, it comes back to what we said before. It just shows you what you can do when you really want to do it. You know, and you put your time and your effort and your all your resources into doing something like that, and you can do it.
It's interesting the stuff you say about Northern Ireland. Like I spent a lot of time there as a kid, and I remember there was a bomb scare when I think I was in the late teens in the UK, somewhere in the northeast. I remember this blind panic, and you know, people were panicking, saying it wasn't even a real bomb scare. It was just someone had said there was a bomb scare. It turned out there hadn't been, and I was just like, what's wrong with you? Yeah. What's wrong with you? Because like whenever there was a bomb scare over there, you just got on with things. It was so normal. And what a worrying thing. And now Northern Ireland's such a much better place in that regard. And it's, you know, I think people should really be appreciative of the work that was done at that time. And, you know, more Molam's anniversary today.
Right, it is, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, you got, yeah, much as I was never a big fan of Blair's, but you know, the one thing what Blair did was he put the time and effort in. And I used to say this to Cameron. Cameron never, ever spent any time in Northern Ireland. There was a joke. He went over once, and somebody says he's got to get back. He's got to get back for his tea. You know, and it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. You know, it was like, and you had to be like, you had to be balanced. You know, Snake. I mean, I'd wear my heart on my sleeve. I believe in United Ireland, but you know, I had to park that with a union. I had to park it when I was doing stuff in Parliament, because I was on the Northern Ireland Select Committee for a long time. I ended up being Shadow City State. And you had to work with both sides, and you had to, because, you know, it was the deal we got, which was, you know, nobody had won, but you could stop it from anybody losing anymore. And the way you did that was by, you know, being fair to everybody. And part of the reason why Northern Ireland has become a more disturbed place in the last 10 years than what it was in the 10 years before is because the attention hasn't been paid to them. They paid attention when they were buying the votes off them in 2017, when they were, you know, when they needed them for the balance of power, and, you know, obviously around the Brexit stuff. But they didn't really do. They didn't put the time in, and also the people that the Tories had as a Secretary of State were absolutely dyed in the wool supporters of loyalism, and I am not them for that, but you know, they let it show, and it's too big, it's too important to do. It should have been much more balanced. And it's, I mean, it's, you know, there's still a long way away from where we were in the 80s and 90s, but, you know, if it isn't looked after properly, it could degenerate. I mean, I think the big thing is the communities don't want to go back to it in the way that they did in the past. So hopefully, you know, if there ever is any attempt to do that, it'll fail. But it still doesn't mean to say that things are right. But as I say, we made a huge step. And I mean, you mentioned more when you think about it. We got elected in May 1997, And the agreement was signed in April 1998. 11 months. It was a massive. You had people. You had Colin. God, I can say his face. Senator from America come across for a huge amount of time in. And that was important because he was seen as being a clean pair of hands, because it would have been anybody from our side that would have said, "Oh, you all supported." Labour's always been more for United Ireland. If it was Tories, it would have been this. But give Blair credit where it's due. He pulled that together. And he put a lot of time in. He made the civil servants go through a lot. And I know more was making the civil servants jump all over the place because they'd never been told what they'd always basically told people what to do. And when Moore went in, things completely changed. She just his knee weight. But Moore was in unison. And I was saying before, I was chairing the policy committee. We give her £50,000 when she was in opposition, so she was able to employ staff. So when she went into she was Shadow Secretary of State. When she went into the full-time job, she was much better prepared than what we'd ever been in the past. And I remember sitting in a meeting with her. It was before she told people she had cancer, but she was just getting her first week, and she was. I says, "What are you going to do, Mo?" And she had a biscuit in her hand. She started hitting herself on the head with this biscuit. She says, "We're going to bounce the bastards all over the place. They've never, ever been bounced the way I'm going to bounce." I'm sure about the civil servants. And she went through them like a dose of salt. But it worked. It's great stuff.
It's really good and an uplifting story when you hear about that. And now we see sort of the opposite happening. Like you say, that we've got people who were like you, who had gone through the background, had a real job. You worked in the mines, then you worked in care, and then you've got your trade union background. You knew things about Northern Ireland, and now you've got like people who are being put in charge of like Northern Ireland, basically the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. And they don't know anything. They haven't read the Good Friday Agreement. It's like 42 pages or something. They haven't bothered to read any of that. That must really infuriate you.
Well, it does. We've got a Prime Minister I don't think he can read, can he? I mean, my latest one is, if I was his dad, I'd be asking me money back off eating. That's without a shadow of a doubt. But a fireplace salesman's education secretary. You couldn't write it. But they've got, look, there's people in Parliament who I would never... they'd never be my friends, but people like John Redwood, David Davis, whatever you think about them, they're not stupid people. They've got years of experience, and they sit on the back benches because they're not nodding dogs. And he's got people on the front bench. You just look at them and think. I mean, I used to work opposite something. Bloody hell, when we were in government in 2005, I was at PBS for a guy called Bill Rammell. He had the higher education brief. And at the time, Boris was a junior minister in higher education. We used to do select committees with him. And he was absolutely bloody useless, And you could see he had no time for detail, and he had no time for doing the work, doing the graft. And it just used to be like going over his head. And he's exactly the same now as what he was back then. And it's frightening for a bloody, particularly in the disgraceful, the situation at the minute. With so many things going on, with the response to COVID, the obvious recession we're going to be facing, and then the whole fallout from Brexit, and you've got a bloke who's he's got the attention of a gnat. It's really frightening. And hopeless people beneath them. As I've seen before, that the only competent one they've got, even though we wouldn't want them, is Cummins, and that's why they kind of get rid of him, because there's nobody else. I mean, you go through them all, Rab comes over as being, the sensible one, but you go beyond that, but there's none of them.
He didn't know what Callier was. Well, sorry, he didn't know that Callier was important for trade.
Yeah. well, the previous Secretary of State, I can't remember her name now, she was Bradley Gwyneth. She didn't realise, the tribalism in Northern Ireland. It's like, all right, so he got on for 800 years, it's like, she just didn't have a clue, and it's like, bloody hell, she started from there. I had a barney with a guy called Owen Patterson who was a rabbit. He was the first Secretary of State the had after come back to power in 2010. We were at dinner with him, and he was just pushing this one line. And I said, you're forgetting the fact that there's a substantial minority, nearly a majority in this country, who don't want to be in this country, and you ignore them. And he end up like you wouldn't talk to us anymore. Like he stormed out his bloody dinner that he was hosting, like, you know. But it's just like, you know, you've got to recognise what you're doing, you know. And well, they are. They're frightening. They really are. They're incompetent. You know, I mean, one thing I hate Thatcher with a vengeance, but she's surrounded herself by people who had some track record. You know, they were doing things to us we hated, but, you know, at least they were competent at what they did. You can't say about any of these. None of them. The only thing they're good at is not answering questions. And they didn't even cover. I mean, the amount of times the BBC says we've been invited to come on the programme and they haven't. I mean, it's a disgrace. Absolute hopeless. Getting away with murder.
So do you think, like, you know, there should be more people in Parliament, like, you know, with a background? You had a track record, you'd worked, you'd done a lot of other things, you had a lot of experience. Do you think that's something that's lacking in Parliament, or maybe like on the Conservative side, or both sides?
Yeah, both sides, absolutely. I mean, because you see, when I was put into BMP, I mean, I thought about long and hard. I was like, I could have stopped with the Union. I could have been with Jonas until the day I retired. I think, you know, I could have probably still been on the National Executive, but it was a bit like Groundhog Day and being here against. And we were still in power. You know, I had 5 years in government, which is a lot of my mates who are down there now. They've never had that chance so far. But it was still like, you know, we were on the outside looking in. It's like, well, the only way to do it is get in there. And this bloke said to me, he said, look, you know, we did a bit like campy entry. He says, the thing you've got, Dave, is you can get up and you can tell a story. And you can say, I know what it's like to be on the dole. I know it's like to be made redundant. I know it's like to be injured at work and stuff like this. And it stops them in the tracks, because they cannot, you know, they'll come out with spacious arguments about anything. You know, I remember Hancock was we did a thing on health and safety, and he was taking the mick, and he was on about, I've been in a care home, and they had a skull and crossbones on this door, do not enter. And I said, like, did you ask anybody what was behind that door? Well, what do you mean? I said, well, there could have been chemicals, could have been, you know, a boiler or whatever, and you got people with dementia walking about, where they would recognise the skull and crossbones, you know. But it was like, they're just flying through, and I just think it is, and on all sides, you know. I mean, we had a discussion a few years back at the Labour Party conference about positive discrimination, and like when I stood in 2005, when I went for selection, there was 4 seats in the North East, and Bladen was the least winnable, and that's the only one that the left won, which is fair enough, you know. There was Gateshead, Durham when Roberta got it. What was the other one? Forget the other one. Anyway, it doesn't matter. You know, well, that was fine. But we had a discussion about how can we, and it was about how can we get more and more working people in. And I said, well, if you're serious, you should apply positive discrimination again. And what you should do is, you shouldn't allow anybody who's been a spad within the last 5 years to stand for a seat. And I was like, what? You know, like, being a policy advisor, being a wonk, you know, respect them, like Ed Miliband, Dave Miliband, who were like bright kids, you know, clever fellas, but they haven't done the things the people like me have done. They can't, you know, and it's hard for them to relate to ordinary people. You know, somebody comes to surgery and tells you, like, you know, I've been put on the dole, or I've been sacked, or, you know, it's like, oh, I feel for you. Well, you did it, man, because you never been there. Do you know? And it's like, and I'm not, you know, I'm not anti people from their backgrounds being in there, but I think the balance is completely skewed. I'm hard pushed to think of many people who are in there now who are what you would call, you know, live a genuine working class life. You know, and you know, it's like you can go too far, and like, you know, but if people don't feel that you understand what they're going through, it makes them less likely to feel like they're going to vote for you. And we're saying over the years, how the votes dropped off. And it's clear with what happened with Brexit. Like, you know, people from my background saying, like, you know, they never said to me, but it's like, we don't know where you come from. I had a mate who had gone through the strike, but was a great lad. And this was about 14 years ago, maybe a bit more. If you remember, there was a big UKIP push in Sunderland. And somebody said, oh, John Richardson stand for the council. All right. I says, John, please, I'm standing for UKIP, Dave. I said, you what, John? He says, I'm standing for UKIP. He said, I don't know what the Labour Party means anymore. He says, yeah, I know what you mean, Dave. He says, but most of them, it's like, and you know, and that's very compounded. Like, you know, the whole debate around last year about how soft we go on Brexit, how far we move back a second referendum, this, that, and the other. And it was like every time they were saying it, I could see people just saying, these people don't understand what I'm going through. And the people might have been conned, but, you know, they made a decision, and we were like effectively rubbishing them and saying, you're not bright enough. We weren't saying this up front, but this is how people considered it. You would tell them they weren't bright enough to make their own minds up. And you see that people, they're bound to get their backs up. You know, and it'll be a long, long way back from when obviously the best thing you can ever find when you're canvassing, you're not on somebody's door and they say, I want to vote for you because my mum would go, man, if I didn't vote Labour, or my dad spin his grave. It's like, champion, that's dead easy. Another one in the boat. People now saying, I'm not going to vote for you because my dad didn't vote for you. Nobody voted for you. We're not voting. And I think that's one of the big miscalculations that Blair made, was that he thought there's a block of people in the country that'll always vote for us. And they didn't realise, well, first and foremost, they don't have to vote at all. You know, and then you get an opposition who comes along with an offer for them, and it might be, we'll give you a council house for half price, or we'll give you shares today and you can sell them for double the price tomorrow, you bribe them with your own money. Or it might be, we'll take you out to Europe because these Europeans will be the people why your life's a mess, isn't it? And like, you know, I think a lot of people in politics, we think that everybody else is involved as what we are, and most people aren't. Most people spend, you know, a few minutes a year thinking about it, and it's like, but if it's like drumming into your day in, day out, like, you know, you're in this mess because of these lousy Europeans, and to be honest, we've never ever put up a good case for Europe anywhere, really, from any political body in this country. I was just like, when you got the people coming in from Eastern Europe, like, you would think historically, why would this side with the Germans, the likes of the Yugoslavs and the people like the Greeks, they would look to us, but they saw us. It's like we were on an old double-decker bus with a back door where you've got 1 foot on the platform and 1 foot on the street. And it's like, well, they're not going to be here, so what's the point of listening to them? And we should have learned to come back to Ireland. Ireland's been transformed by Europe, and we could have been if we'd engaged more. And I think the whole stuff, I'm sorry to rant on, but the whole stuff around the anti-democratic stuff, which it is overly bureaucratic, but we never challenged it. We should have organised and said, look, you know, this isn't good enough. We want the parliament to mean something. We want proper elections. We don't want to be run by bureaucrats. And you would never get to, like, you know, a single state sort of thing, but we could have made much more inroads. But because we didn't build alliances, people didn't listen to us. And then which made it easy for them people who always wanted to be out for different reasons, that we're out now, and we didn't know where we're going to be. You know, and we should have been running the job.
Do you think that you're talking about, like, that could be a disconnect because some people haven't done these ordinary jobs and some people haven't, like, you know, lived that kind of lifestyle, and there's too many MPs there that maybe haven't got that relationship with people? Do you feel that's the case with members as well? Because let's say, for example, in 2016, when there was the coup against Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, he'd just been democratically elected by members, and members said, we want this. And it seems to members that the Parliamentary Labour Party, or a large section in the Parliamentary Labour Party, because I know you were there at the time and you weren't one of those people, they'd said, actually, members, you're wrong, you voted wrong. Yeah. You're incorrect about Jeremy Corbyn. And that still goes on to this day. That feeling within the membership still goes on to this day.
Well, you need to go back. The irony of this is, Jeremy only got the job because they changed the rules. And they only changed the rules because modernising and whispering Ed Miliband. I have a lot of time for Ed Miliband. Well, people whispering in his ear saying, you've got to move away from the unions. You're saying as redhead, you've got to do something. And when they come up with the plans, we said to them, I was on the trade union group in Parliament, but also we're having meetings with the unions, and we were saying to them, listen, if you go ahead with this rule change, you'll open the door to people who want to come in, who won't be, you know, the people that you are thinking going to come in. Because he was being told by advisors, oh, the population would love to have a say in who's the Labour leader. They didn't give a toss. You know, by and large, people, like, they didn't even know what was going on, but obviously loads of people come in, and give credit to his job. You know, John McDonnell, Jeremy, they got organised and they got people in, and you know, and so I think they were annoyed with themselves anyway, because they'd given the opportunity to people to elect somebody like Jeremy, but my view was, he's the leader. He's being elected. I mean, I keep saying this a bit, I went to Parliament, and I had Barney's with Blair, the policy forum through the union, all sorts. But they asked me to be a PBS. There wasn't a coup against Blair, but there was a big move against him in 2006. And a lot of people had to stand down. Watson had to stand down. Ian Wright. There's about 7 of them who have been PBSs or whips had to stand down. And I got a phone call out the blue from the chief whip, who was Jackie Smith at the time. He says, "Do you like to be a PBS?" I'm saying, "You didn't want me, man." "No, we do, and it was because they were struggling to find people. So I says, okay, because you're part of the team. You get on and you help out. And I was a PBS in higher education, defence, and the Foreign Office. And then when Ed got elected, so I served under both Gordon and Tony. When Ed got elected, he asked to be a whip. I was a whip. And then when Jeremy got elected, he asked us to be a whip, and I didn't want to do it because I hated my time in the whip's office, because a lot of us was they treat people like kids and then treat them like adults, and it was like they need to know, and it was bollocks, to be honest with you. But Jeremy said, I really needed to go in the whip's office to give Graham Morris some support, because Graham was basically a lone voice. And I really enjoyed it, because I effectively become the go between the whip's office and the leader's office, because they both respected us for whatever reason it was. And then I took the Shadow Secretary State job on. But I just think that the people who they thought they were being really, really clever. I mean, one line. I was the Scottish whip for Ian Murray at the time, the only Scottish MP in 2016. And he rang and says, Davey, I'm going to stand down and stuff. And I said, Ian, you can't stand down. His knee, he got me nobody left. He says, I've got to do it. And they all said it was done, we did it independently from each other. It's a load of rubbish. It was a deliberate attempt, because what they thought was there'll be a certain number, let's say a dozen. When a dozen have resigned, you cannot fill the spots on the front bench. Because they either didn't think that those of us who were left would be capable of doing it, or would dare to do it, and that he'd have to walk. But I think Jeremy did the classic, because he's a union man, classic union. No, I'm not having it. No, to hell with you. And he rang us up, and he rang. I ended up doing two jobs. But Paul Flynn, Paul was 82-year-old. He took the Welsh job on. He took the speakers meeting. He just said, me and him was just on the bench laughing, like, look at us. We're like 150 years between us. Like, what are we doing here, But it was like the job needed doing. And I'll tell you the funny thing. When they offered a Northern Ireland job, it was the happiest moment of my life. I loved it. And I got the job on a Tuesday. And on the Friday, I had to go and lay a wreath at the centenary of the Somme. And it was like unbelievable. Look, what am I doing? I'm sitting behind Prince Charles, Camilla, all the leaders of the UK governments, and me and Jeremy and Diane and other people sitting behind them. And then we're on the train going back towards a tunnel, and I got a phone call from Katie Clark, who was working in Jeremy's office at the time. She said, David, I want to ask you a favour. I says, what? She says, will you take up the Scottish Secretary? I says, nah. I says, Katie, man. I says, if I do that, I'll end up doing neither job properly. I says, I don't really want to do it. She says, well, will you think about it? I says, okay, I'll think about it. I said, but I'm on the Channel Tunnel at the minute. And literally, I went into the tunnel, and she must have had a stopwatch on, because I'd just come out about a mile, and she rang us back. She says, have you made your mind up yet? I says, what you give us this pressure for? She says, I'll tell you why. And this was Friday tea time, 6 o'clock. She says, on Wednesday, it's Scottish questions. And we've got nobody to stand up at the questions. And the questions were laid on the Monday. So it was like, right, all right, then I'll do it, because it had to be done. Because once we couldn't fill a spot, would have folded, But I did, I picked it up, and to be honest with you, I didn't enjoy it, because when I was doing stuff up in Scotland, the leadership weren't supportive up there, because they were completely anti-Jeremy. Well, not completely, but most of them were anti-Jeremy. And you go to a room and you'd be like, who do I trust in here? Who can I say things to? And it was like, they didn't give us the baton they should have. And it was pretty dodgy, And you couldn't believe, the SNP, I got on quite well, the SNP, I was with the Scottish Affairs Committee, but it's quite obvious for them, where he's an open goal. You've got an Englishman representing Scotland. You know, of course they're taking the mickey, but I was laughing that off and it didn't bother us in the slightest. But but I should have been getting support on basic stuff about what's going on in day-to-day stuff in Scotland, and they weren't giving us press briefs. They weren't giving us policy documents. They made Ian Murray the Scottish. I'm trying to get the formal title again. I think it was the Scottish Parliament's Westminster spokesman. You know, to like undermine me, and I'm like, it bothered us, but I didn't let them say it bothered us. But it was like, what you playing at, man? And it was all part of undermining what Jeremy, because they couldn't believe that we were able to keep on going. They couldn't get it. And I give credit to people, Andy Burnham, Keir Starmer, people like who I bet they were really having a go at them, and they kept on. They stuck because it was the right thing to do. And it was, the members, and then the members went and, voted for him even more the second time around, which really chased him off. And then when we go and get such a good result in 2017, they've had the hat trick of being pissed off, but, serve them right. But I mean, we're saying the colour of them, you look at these who've been put into Lords this last few days, Ian Austin, Kate Hoy, Gisela Stewart. Terrible.
It's over, isn't it? The idea that like your ultimate loyalty to the Labour Party, and that's it's a socialist trade unionist value, isn't it? To be loyal and stick together.
What side are you on? What team are you on? You do it. It's like, I used to sit with the stuff we used to argue black and white with Blair behind the scenes. But what is it with the union and after when I was in Parliament? But when push comes to shove, Paul, the number one thing for me is I've learned no else I'm 66 years old now, is you can't do note if you didn't win. You're powerless. You can make the best speeches in the world. You can get up. I mean, I tell you, when we were in coalition, like yesterday, when we're up against coalition government, because we're either in the chamber or in select committees, we were obviously in the minority. You'd make the argument, and you get the Liberal Democrats joined in with the argument, and you know that in like an hour's time they're going to go and vote the other way. And it's depressing, but it's like you keep at it, But ultimately, you've got to win, and it's and I know it's an old cliche and some people don't go along with it, but a bad Labour government's always going to be better than the best possible Tory government, without a shadow of a doubt. It is, and it's not where I never wanted to be part of it. Like oh please vote for us because we're a little bit better than them. But the truth is, we are a little bit better, at least a little bit better than them, but we can be much, much better. But you can't deliver for people when you haven't got all the levers of power. And that's that. I think that's the lesson that people need to get to grips with. And and when you're disunited, you can't do that. And people see through you if you're not on the same page. And that's And I mean, the truth is, 2017. Obviously, Mia reckons she called the election because she wanted a mandate for Brexit. That was bollocks. She thought that we were on the floor. She was going to wipe the floor with us. And she might have but all she thought was, I've just got to turn up and get voted. But she didn't realise that for 6 weeks people were going to have to listen to proper arguments. And we won the debate. And we the fact is, we won the debate partly because she was so crap. But we did win the debate. And, and we put, and whatever, all the modernisers argue, look at the numbers we put on in that one election. We clawed back millions of people that were lost. Through having a socialist platform, because you get up and you say to people, what's wrong with saying we want to build 1 million houses for people who haven't got one? What's wrong with saying we want to give kids a decent education? We want to give people, good free school meals. We want better hospitals. And why wouldn't you vote for that? So.
All right, you're absolutely right about that, and it's that hopeful message, and I think that's possibly what didn't happen in 2019. It didn't come across as hopeful. It came across like a divided party, and the media attacks had worked over that period of time. But why didn't you choose to stand in 2017?
Because I've done. You got to go to the base. You got to stand for 5 years. I wasn't particularly fit. I mean, I've never really looked after myself very well, and I just didn't want to be a lame duck. And I had to look like I'd be going to 2022, and my wife's 3 year, she'll kill us if she tells us she's 3 years older than me, and it's like we want some time together. I mean, I worked since I was 15. You know, I used to have this thing. I was working on the pit before man stood on the moon. That's how old I am, you know. And it's like, you know, I wanted some me time, and it was like, if you think, you know, so I would have, and as things turned out, if things had panned out the way they did, and we ended up having the 2019 election, if I'd stopped in 2017, I would definitely not have stood down in 2019, because I would have thought that like a change of an MP at that moment in time would have been detrimental. You know, that's no disrespect to Liz who took over me, but it would have been harder for her than for me as a sitting MP. So I would have been committed for another 5 years, so till 2024. I just didn't want me going down there and just make the numbers up. So I mean, Kevin McGuire, he says, Jim, you've gone up the top. You know, do I regret it? I think, you know, the particularly I regret more than else is the Northern Ireland stuff, because Northern Ireland's come right to the front, obviously, with the Brexit thing and everything else. And I did a lot of stuff with victims groups and things like that. So I missed that big time. And I missed the whole knocking about of it, you know. But whether I'd been physically fit enough, I was going home every night absolutely shattered. You know, I was going, I mean, I'm not the best in the world at looking after myself. I would go home, I wasn't eating properly, you know, I was eating crap. And I've always been a big drinker, but to be honest, the last few years when I was down there, I wasn't drinking anything like what I used to be, but I was just absolutely knackered. I mean, I got a knee operation, got both my knees done in 2014. But after, you know, I mean, it's not physical work, it's just tiring, you know. And I was going back to the flat every night and looking, oh God, got to walk up them stairs and stuff like that. I didn't want to keep dragging myself up and down for another 5 years. Plus, it was like you say, I wanted some me time with my wife. She deserved it. I mean, we're effectively since the strike, 83, I've been on the road. You know, not very often I've spent a week other than holiday time at home. I mean, I got on the NAC in Johnson, 93. I was probably away from home more in the, what was on there, 93 to 2005. I was way more then than what I was in MP. You know, because I was loving it. And I was at the top of the tree, so I was, you know, going all over the place. But so it was more just about my own family life, and it wasn't any disillusionment out like that. I mean, you know, it was like I say, I was loving doing what I was doing, but it was just like, could I really keep it up for another 5 years? So,
I think I remember speaking to Graham Morris in 2016 when he had a lot of shadow portfolios like yourself, and I think it really did take a lot out of people. You know, there's the emotional side of it as well, and like, you know, you're trying to keep these things going and you're taking on these extra things. So it's no wonder you felt a little bit run down at that time. Right. And also like, I think what a lot of members I hope a lot of Labour Party members never forget is the debt of gratitude that they have, like that they should have for people like you and Graham and others for stepping up at that time and keeping the Labour Party functional, because it was a huge thing.
Right. Well, it was, to me, it was a Yoast thing, but it didn't feel like Yoast. Like, it just felt like again, example, right? I used to apply this when I worked in care. It's going to sound stupid a little bit. When I worked on the pit, you go to work on a Sunday night. The pit had been standing all weekend, and you'd walk in, and you'd find the place was flooded, and everybody looked at you because you were the fitter. So you were the one that would take his clears off, go in the water, get the pump put right, and get the water shifted before anybody else get to work. It was like just what you had to do, and the same thing applied when I was telling you before about taking somebody to the toilet in care. It was like, it's going to be done. You know, that woman, if you didn't tap the toilet, she's going to dirty herself. So, and it was a bit like that with me with the stuff in 2016. It was like, well, you know, I probably had more knowledge of Northern Ireland than virtually anybody in there anyway, because I'd done it for a long time. I'd been on the Northern Ireland Select Committee, so, and I had really good relations in Northern Ireland with the Labour movement, but also with the community, the business community, because I'd done the work for a long time. The Scottish thing was a bit different, but I was one of the few people who was on the Scottish Affairs Committee. But I'd done a lot of work up in Scotland with Unison for years and years, and with NUM to a certain extent. So I had some background. So it was like, it wasn't, the work didn't frighten us, and it was just like, you know, but it had to be done. And even if, as like, to some extent, it didn't really matter if we were crap. we weren't crap, but we could have been crap, but we were doing it to annoy these bastards who tried to sink us. You know what I mean? They were talking openly to Tory MPs saying, will you hurry up and call a general election so we can get rid of these people? You know, they really wanted that to happen in because they thought the coup was going to screw us. And they just couldn't get their heads around it, you know, and they still can't. I mean, I remember going to Tom Watson's party. Tom Watson, I think it was his 50th birthday. I mean, Watson gone back years, you know. And there was people coming in, and they were like, looking, what's he doing here, like, you know? And I'm thinking, well, I remember you used to be somebody dead important, didn't you? And there were MPs who come in, you know, like, I'm not going to mention names because I still got on okay with them, but there was like, you know, these were the people who like just like turned their back on us. You know, when you needed the most, it's like, you know, when your back's against the wall, you didn't walk away from, and they forget that like every one of us is only there of the, you know, the sacrifices and the work that people have done for more than a century. But there's none of us, however good we are, whether it's Jeremy or Blair, anybody at all, none of us would have been there without what people have done before us. And you're the office wall of that period of time. But it's not about you, you know. But some of them it was about them, and they were careerists, and they were like, you know, and you could see that they're like, they couldn't believe that they were on the escalator to the top, and somebody had turned it off, and they couldn't come to grips with it, you know. But it was like, well, you know, you've chosen. I mean, again, I've got a lot of time. I think Ian Murray's a really capable lad, and I've kept on pretty good terms with him. But it was like, you know, you just didn't do this sort of thing, you know. It's like, yeah, it might be crap, but particularly when you're the only one, you know. But you know, he did what he wanted to do, and you know, I know he would argue he did the right thing from his perspective. But you know, for me, there's just some things in life you just know are not right, and what they did then was that absolutely. And the other, you know, it was also when Jeremy got elected. There was people of real calibre who served in the government who didn't take up jobs. I think Yvette was one of them. You know, and again, I've got a lot of time for Yvette Corbyn. You know, very, very capable woman, but they didn't even go on his front bench. You know, and it's like, well, hang on here. You know, we'd had a tanking in 2015. Well, we're not tanking in 2015, but we were being knocked back when we thought we might be going to win. So everybody's head was down. But you know, that's a time when you want people to stand up. You know, it's like, it's just, for me, it's just what you do. You know, I mean, if you think about our whole history in the movement, we've always been up against almost unbeatable, you know, opposition. You know, I said before about the British Empire, the establishment state that goes back millennium, if not centuries. And yet we had the temerity to stand up, like, you know, and the miners are some of the first people to do it. The temerity to stand up and say, we're not having it. We're going to challenge you. We're going to keep challenging. But then you get to a position where, you know, at the highest level, the way you can do that, and half your team walks off the pitch. You know, it's just not right. You know, it's can't be right.
Well, I think personally, we need a lot more of people with your attitude rather than the people who walk off the pitch. Right. So I'm going to ask you now, what are your plans coming up for the future? Have you got anything coming up?
I've put in for the NEC, say the sale pace at the NEC. Mainly I want to say before I want to play my part in trying to see to anybody who can't listen, and whether the listeners are any more there than what they did, you know, what they do now or what they did when I was an MP. Is we need to focus on winning. We need to work out an offer to the people that we've lost. And I don't mean this the way it's going to sound, because people, if you think about the offer that Thatcher made about council houses, forget the moral outrage that was, to say to an ordinary man or woman, ordinary workman or woman, look, here's a chance to change your life. We need something of that scale to grab people's attention. Now, you know, I don't know what it is, but I mean, you know, but we need to be focused on that rather than having internal debates about, you know, whether it's anti-Semitism or who hates who the most and who we're going to take to court and what's it going to cost, all this sort of stuff. And I'm not even sure, Paul, if the NEC is the right place to have that debate. But if the NEC, which is supposed to be the governing body of the party, if they're not playing their part properly, then you can hardly expect, you know, everybody else further down the line to be doing the same thing. And also, likewise, the PLP. You know, if the PLP didn't set a good example in the times what we're talking about, other than you say like those of us who did stand up, but like others, and it's hard then to say to the people who you want out there who win elections for you, the genuine people knocking on doors and stuffing envelopes and all that sort of stuff. You do the right thing, but I won't bother doing the right thing. So you know, but I'm pragmatic. I want us to win, because if you didn't win, you're out. You know, and we can be which we were in 2017. I was delighted with what we did in 2017, but we didn't win. So all the good plans we had, none of them got through. And I know, you know, you can. I mean, it's things like you nudge the government and they do what you said they should. Like the exam thing this week. You know, we were saying last week you should do it, but you know, that's relatively. It's not small in the scale of the political concern, but it's not changing the world in the sense that we did in the 40s and potentially could have done since. So whether that's part of it, I mean, I've put in. I'm on a. I'm living up in Teesdale now, and I put my hat in the ring. I've actually been put on a thing called the Area Action Partnerships, which is about giving grants to small groups of people. And so, but I got appointed to that in February, and then before the first meeting, it was the lockdown. So we haven't had a meeting yet. So that's done a little bit, but then obviously I'm very involved with the Maras, Friends of Jeremiah's Gala. So I mean, obviously that didn't happen this year. We need to get the fundraising needs building up. We need to get back to where we had some really good discussions with the unions back in the last year, where we'd hope to get like a 5-year plan from the unions to support us in a big way, in the sense that the unions been supported, but not in a way that's been keep on going. It's just like, oh, but, like we'll give you £10,000 this year, and then get no for the next 2 years. And it would almost be better getting £2,000 a year for 5 years, because at least then you can plan. We want more than that, a lot more than that. But then the other thing is the whole thing around Redhills, about seeing that through to what we hope it will be, which is a statement for the future, built on the heritage of the past. And I think that can be a real, for me, if we can pull that off, that'll be something that you know, that'll be as big as anything I've done in my life. If we can do that, and sustain the gala for the foreseeable future. So you know, but I have, because I keep getting these emails off the sale-based secretary about, would you like to stand for the county council? And no, because I just didn't think I could do. I didn't think I'd put the time in that would be required. Because if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it properly. You know, and I think, and particularly I'm living out there in the sticks, just a simple fact of getting up and down to Durham every day and stuff like that, you know. And so, but I'll do, you know, wherever I can, really. You know,
well, I hope the people will consider you for the NEC, because it sounds like you've got some ideas that could really help the party and help change things. So, I'd just like to say on behalf of Socialist Think Tank, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been a real pleasure and a lot of really insightful things that you've got there. So I hope if you like this video at home, that you like, share and subscribe. So once more, thanks again, Dave, and I'll be in touch.
all right, mate. Stay well. Take care.
You too.
We'll keep the red flag flying here.